Oh, look, Lauren's up on the screen too.
Jennifer zoomed in, it's Lauren's part of the picture.
So embarrassing.
It's cute.
You still get one vote. We'll call the meeting to order on that note. We do have a quorum. In fact, we have a full house. First order of business is to accept the minutes of the February 1st regular meeting. Do I have a motion? So moved.
Second.
Moved by Phil, second by Lauren. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
It is unanimous. The minutes are approved. Visitor comments and petitions. We have more people here than normal. Is anybody here to speak to anything that's not on the agenda? Hearing none. Guess we'll continue. Ferry service update. I don't have anything new since the last meeting. I know John King has requested a meeting with the ferry service to talk about ferry design and talk about their upcoming plans for the Margaret Chase Smith, just to get it on the ground floor and just start the conversation when he gets back into town. And Mark has said he's happy to have a meeting and even potentially come to the island again if that's needed, to talk to the community about the plan and get input as he's done in the past. So it's a nice way to start the conversation, to have the ferry service open just to a discussion about the future of the boat. They're already planning on building a hybrid electric ferry, which can be run straight electric when the infrastructure is ready, which seems like a great thing. That's all I've got. Any questions about the ferry service before we continue? Hearing none. Sea level rise update. Shay.
We are continuing the hiring process for the resilience planning position. We have done one round of interviews. I'm anticipating receiving another couple of applications, which we will review before making our decision. And the next Sea Level Rise Committee meeting is tomorrow night at 5:30.
Great. Update on municipal building project. We are going to discuss the award and the bid for the Up Island Public Safety Garage later on. Is there anything before we get to that?
No, hold it until then.
All right, we'll hold it until then. Upcoming meetings and subcommittee reports. We have a planning board meeting on February 27th at 5 p.m. I think that's it. And the short
Hey,
term.
Jim, it's Dad. I'm having a lot of trouble getting the Zoom call to have sound. I've got the picture and everything else, but no sound. What do I do? What have I done wrong?
I guess the question is, can anybody else on the call hear us? Is this a call wide issue or is it just Jim?
I can hear you guys
hear
just
you.
fine.
Okay, so Jim, it sounds like it might be on your computer. I don't know the answer other than others on the Zoom call can hear us.
Can you message him to turn up his own volume? Oh, we can. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thanks, because that might solve it. Anyway, we'll continue anyway, Jim. I guess you can't hear us, but we're gonna try to get that sorted out for you. Town manager's report, Janet.
I've handed out to you the warrant, number 17, minutes of the January 17th Lighthouse Restoration Committee meeting, minutes of the January 24th Housing Committee meeting. Just tonight, Lauren brought in Jennifer's minutes from the last night's Municipal Building Project Committee meeting. And I'm handing out a FY24 budget workshop calendar, which I'm pushing it back to begin March 8th, the second Wednesday in the month. And that would be every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Couple nights prior to the select board meeting. So that's all I have.
Any questions before we move on? Hearing none. Correspondence. I see. I mean, there is correspondence here from Paige, but I think we're gonna take that up under new
Yeah.
business, town network problems. So on to Islesboro, looking ahead. Unfortunately, I didn't have an opportunity to update that for this year, but I think by next meeting I will have something to consider for the select board to consider and hopefully add to and improve as we do every year when we carry on the tradition of Islesboro looking ahead. New business, discuss / award the bid for the Up Island Public Safety Garage. We did get that via email yesterday. I just got the minutes today that Jennifer put together. Jennifer, thank you for doing that. And I don't know if Lauren, you want to talk about this, start the conversation?
Sure, and I invite Pete to jump in, or Janet to contribute as well. We only had one bid that came in, and it was extremely high. It was a total of $1,586,400. So it was 3 times the expected amount that we were looking at. Well, at least 3 more, more than. And was very difficult for us to see, without talking in more detail to the bidder, exactly why it was so high. We got pieces of it which looked like a lot of the additions, solar panels, putting the PEX I mean, there were just a number of things that you could point to. And one of them also might have been a fairly high estimate of working on the site. So all in all, the members of the committee felt that it was not even worth exploring in terms of negotiation. It was just too high. But what they did recommend, and there were 2 motions to take to the select board. One is to reject the bid that came from Maine Coast Construction, and also to roll this project into the project for the health center. So both projects would be managed under a contract manager. So in that process, the contract manager would work with the architect to find ways to have cost savings and bring it in on budget. That would be the way it would be, the goal it would be. And everything, including the possibility of modifying the health center, the possibility of waiting on many more cutting edge aspects of energy savings until we could add that money to the project. So in other words, we may have everything prepared for solar panels, et cetera, but maybe solar panels don't go in right at the get-go. There's all sorts of things that could be explored. We also appointed Pete Anderson, JT, and Bill Boardman to be on an interview committee for the contract manager. And that should be happening in the next 3 weeks. They should be hiring a contract manager. And one of the candidates, there are 4 candidates for contract manager, and one of them is the contract manager that did the remodel of the school. So there's some familiarity, some track record there, both with working with Steve Blatt and also working in the community, and working with a project in Camden, the snow what was it?
Oh, the Snow Bowl.
Snow Bowl project. So I don't know what else to add to that. I want to turn to Pete to see what I missed, but personally, there was a little bit of a relief in my mind. I mean, it was so much larger than we could have expected in terms of a bid that there was no possibility of negotiating at that big a discrepancy. So that, and we knew, even going into the process, that putting the whole project under a contract manager, rolling it into the overall, I mean, we wanted to have the Up Island Public Safety Garage happen sooner, and we wanted that ideally to be done by local contractors, local builders. But since that didn't happen, a very good result is to have it under the same umbrella as the contract manager with the health center. There's lots of cost savings. I mean, if you're going to pave the roads, you bring over materials for both projects. If you're talking about fill or something like that, site work, all that stuff, that could all be done kind of, in the same time period, and that would be cost savings. So I'm actually very positive about this result. I can't think of what else to add, but do you mind if I invite Pete to say a comment?
The only thing I would say is that, I'm gonna correct Lauren a little bit, the price was not 1,500,000.
Right.
It was 1,005,000.
Okay, gotcha, that's right.
1,005,864. But that would seem like just a stretch too far to try to negotiate that down to the budget that we were trying to hold on this project. We're trying to build 3 projects out of the same pot of money. Every dollar we spend beyond the budget for the fire barn is a dollar that we don't have for the health center. We thought it'd be better to regroup and bring the project in under the same umbrella with the contract, the construction manager, and see where we could find some efficiencies.
So I'm just, a question about the procedure with the construction manager. Is that construction manager going to be getting bids for certain things?
Yeah.
Or hiring out, is he gonna bids for everything? Are we gonna be getting a bid for the building, for example, for the health center? Or are they just piecemealing bids for the
Mail
individual?
the contracts.
Okay.
For the electrical, for the plumbing, for the.
So it's not a general, they're the general contractor.
Right.
essentially.
So in fact, it is possible, I believe, Pete, correct me if I'm wrong on this one too. It could be the construction manager hires a local person to do the plumbing or hires a local person to do, the heating system or something like that. So it's going to be who he thinks or she thinks is going to do the best job and bring it under budget. And that will be working with the architect and the building committee, primarily Pete.
And they work, the construction manager works directly for the town.
Right.
So
So
you'd be signing a contract with them to.
it sounds like just rejecting the bid, which is 3 times sort of what the budget is on the front end, sounds like a pretty reasonable thing. In terms of moving forward and rolling it in, does it make more sense to try to understand the cost of the health center before we start breaking ground on another building? Given that the projected cost potentially is so much higher? Or is the architect still confident that the projected budget of 400,000 plus for that building is going to be, gonna hold? Because if we roll it in with everything, all of a sudden, we may be over budget all the way around, as opposed to if we wait a little bit on the Up Island garage, then we could potentially finish the health center with the money that we have. And then if we're going back to the voters, then we at least have, I would say, the largest, most important part of the project done.
I think that we're going to go forward, believing that we can do all of these projects on budget. Not necessarily that the 400 will be the Up Island Public Safety Garage, maybe it'll be 375, maybe it'll be, 450, but the point is, we're going to try to do all the projects, and I think that discussion with the contract manager, with the town, with the architect will be, how can we do that?
I guess,
and
What do you
it's-
do if it comes in at 800,000?
So, yeah, so if what's going on is a project.
Then that will be
manager-
a part of the discussion with the contract manager about what do we do at that point?
I just don't want to get to the point where both buildings are half done and we are out of money from the town. I
Yeah,
just
that
don't want
will-
to get to that point.
My understanding, I wish Steve was on, he was gonna try to be on tonight, but my understanding is that's not, it won't be a situation in which the contract manager and the architect say, ooh, darn, we're halfway and we've only built half of each. We will know those numbers as we go along. It's not gonna be,
I think we kind of keep them separate from each other in the numbers. But try to fit them all under the same, with the same amount of money. So that if the fire barn is still way above, we make sure that we get the health center done.
I just am concerned if we're breaking ground on all of them at the exact same time, that we've got projects half finished and not enough money to finish projects,
Well,
that's all.
By the time we start breaking ground, everything will be under contract.
yeah,
Okay.
it's not gonna
So it's
be.
not gonna be like,
Yeah.
they're not gonna start and then be bringing, okay.
Yeah.
I feel better about that. Any,
Uh,
Pete, You guys put out the bid and you had 7 people that you put it out to, and you only got the one bidder to respond. Did the other bidders give you any indication of why they were not interested in the project?
I, called every one of them. There was a few that had withdrawn that I didn't call, but, I called almost all of them, and I talked to 3 of them. And there were 2 others that said that they were thinking about, bidding on it, but they just never showed.
Was it a time factor or?
Some of it was the amount of time to put the bid together, but I really don't believe that. They had plenty of time. And I think the other thing is that just that we had said that it could start anytime after the bids and go until sometime in June, I think it was, next year. And I think they're just so booked up that
Yeah, that's my other question. Where are you gonna get the manpower to do all of this?
well, a lot of the construction managers have a lot of inroads with groups of people on the mainland, and they can,
Snatch them up one job from another.
yeah.
I think Mert, we talked earlier, wanted to say something.
If I may, let the board be aware, and I wanted it to be noted for the press as well as the people of Islesboro. The member of the fire department does not agree with the bid that we got, and the committee recommended the right action to reject the bid. And, but I wanted everybody to know is that the fire department by no means wanted an up island garage bays to be that kind of cost or money. What I was fearful is that the people in the Rumorville might label the fire department, they're getting out of hand, they're too extravagant. That's by no means not. If pricing and staying in budget means we have to eliminate something, we're agreeable to that. The main objective was to be able to keep 2 emergency vehicles on the north end. And that's still our wish. I think we have a great building committee. I think there's enough talent on that board to proceed with what decisions we have to make. And I think the group can steer the town correctly and advise the board correctly. And I will proceed and support whatever comes out in the end. So fire department is definitely flexible on making it work and stay under budget. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't look like we were just pushing for something real fancy dancy. A little small history note, I mentioned it at last night's meeting. If anybody is aware, the date yesterday, February 14th, it marked a birthday for Engine 4. It was 55 years ago yesterday, when my father, Fire Chief George Durkee, went to Canada to pick up Engine 4 and brought it to the island and made a delivery on February 14th, 55 years ago.
Very cool.
And at the year ago this month, the dedication of the new truck Engine 2, Father spoke and he did a statement that proved it correctly. Engine 4, purchased 1968, was the best bargain and deal in cost of that period and gave the best service to Islesboro for 55 years. The vehicle is still on the island, it's in storage, and it still functions and still runs. And how we got it to survive for 55 years, is having good storage, heated space for emergency, which is very crucial. For any municipal vehicle, it's keeping it undercover, is longevity to the vehicle. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. I think in all my time in the select board, the fire department has been very conscientious with spending taxpayer funds and has made more happen with less. I don't think I'm personally not concerned about the fire department's, the optics of that building with respect to the fire department. I really appreciate you showing up.
Thank you.
You guys didn't bid it.
Are there other questions, comments from the select board? Other questions, comments from anyone here in person or on the Zoom call? Hearing none, the recommendation from the committee is to reject the bid and roll this project in with the health center project. And I would entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Or an alternative motion if someone prefers. So moved by Melissa,
Second.
second by Shay. Is there any discussion? Hearing
So
none,
you're gonna vote to put the two projects together.
same under the umbrella of the, not project manager, but construction manager. Is that what the
Yes.
person's called? Construction manager. Yes, there'd
And
be,
take it piecemeal.
so there would be a person who would be hired by the town, who then would be in charge of getting contracts for individual pieces and then would essentially head that. It would be essentially a general contractor hired by the town to run the project.
It would present you with a guaranteed maximum price for both buildings.
What happens if he exceeds it?
If you what?
What is the guarantee? What happens if he exceeds it? You know, the cost of materials goes up. Nobody expected it.
So people are putting in bids for the individual pieces and they are guaranteeing, so each person is going to have the risk of whatever part that they have put a guaranteed price on. And those things, who knows, they can go out of business, they can go out of, there's all sorts of things that could happen, but
Meter could hit it.
yeah, exactly. Theoretically, there is a cap.
Can I ask a question, even though I
Please.
made the motion? If the project manager comes back and says that no, that these two buildings cannot be done for X amount of money, do we then need to go back to the town, since it was initially voted on that it would be two separate buildings that the money would be allocated for? It would get wiped and then they'd have to go back and re-vote for that amount of money for just the one building, correct?
I think the answer to that is yes. If
Okay.
it turned out that the entire project could not be done and all of the funds were going to be spent on, let's, for example, just the health center.
Right.
I think that we would want to go back to the town and say,
This
you've
is what
already,
it is.
yeah, you've already approved the bond, you've already approved the project, but the project can't happen as designed.
Okay.
I think that to me seems like the right thing to do, but I don't know if that's necessarily required, but it feels like what we ought to be doing. And I think that's what we would do.
With that, then I'm still good with my motion. I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, I think it's hard to move forward on a project, especially of that size, if you can't do the project for the money and then the town might. I mean, I could guess how that would end up, but you want the town to approve it on the front end and not hope that they're happy with it on the back end.
Right.
Especially for, millions of dollars.
Right.
So that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts, questions? Well, with that, I would entertain a vote on, there's a motion on the floor, moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes, it's unanimous. All right, request for year 24 budget on funding mental health pilot program and Osborne Community Fund. I have talked to a couple people about this project. I don't know if there's anybody here who's specifically here to speak to this project.
I thought Michael Hutcherson was going to.
I'm here.
Oh,
Oh, there's Michael.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Hey, Michael, thank you so much for joining us, Michael. I'll turn the floor over to you if you want to give a brief overview to the select board of this.
All right, I'll be as brief as possible, guys. ICF has committed to funding over the next 2 years substantial amount of money, $200,000, to appropriately pay for mental health provision here on the island for all ages. And we've got two very well qualified providers, one of whom will be working directly with Lindsay Dakers and a school, focusing on kids and families, and another who will be focusing on adults. And they'll be coming over at least once a week and be paid appropriately for their services. The health center is directly involved in coordinating this effort. ICF is more or less a funder of this project. And I'm here today sort of representing ICF in this. And we've dedicated the funds. We're of course going to follow through with this. But I think it's worth considering now, and certainly as time goes on, if this program, whatever you want to call it, has a noted positive impact. We feel it's a good use of money for the community, that the town should be thinking about this in terms of its budget. What are the real costs of quality mental health care provision on the island? What models should be considered outside of what we presently have, which is free for all, which some of you, maybe all of you, are aware of. It's a pretty radical thing to do, and it's been going on for 18 years, I believe. And the woman, Joyce Sirota, who's been doing it, is retiring, and we felt compelled to sort of make sure that there wasn't a gap that was longer than necessary. She hasn't been coming out to the island for the last 2 years, actually, just doing telehealth type stuff. So we said, hey, let's just make sure we can get access sort of back on track here on the island. But again, in regard to the sort of fiscal concerns, wanted to raise it as an issue, something to think about. This is not a cheap endeavor, and there might be some other models out there to properly fund this, perhaps in some hybrid ways. And we can talk about that at another time, but it's important to just bring it up, something for people to think about now and into the future.
Great, Michael, thank you so much for coming. I think this is a great pilot program. And just to make sure I understand, so right now the Islesboro Community Fund the Islesboro Community Fund is funding 2 mental health professionals to come to the island for the next 2 years. And you're not here asking for any money in this year's budget, but just as to think about for the future in terms of what the funding model might be after 2 years, if in fact this is a successful pilot program.
Yes, and I think everybody in the room probably knows, or certainly a select board, the town has historically been paying the Joyce Sirota $7,500 a year for her services. Janet, correct me if I'm wrong there.
That's about right. Plus we did some ferry.
Okay, yeah. And the town is committed to, as far as I understand, unless you all feel differently about it, to continuing that level of support for mental health services. Your budget being as tight as it is, I'm not going to get involved in that conversation, but it's certainly, as time goes on, we're going to be measuring the efficacy of this, and we're going to be sort of reporting, if hopefully quarterly, if not more frequently, on some data that we're collecting, that we'll see how many people are actually taking advantage of it. But anyway, It may not end up costing $100,000 a year. It just remains to be seen. But anyway, that's it for now, I guess.
Great, well, thanks, Michael. That sounds great. I mean, I think it's gonna be a good opportunity to see what the need is and what the cost might be in the future. And it's a good opportunity now as we head into the budget season, even though there isn't any money actively in the budget this year, to think about how that might fit into future years' budgets. We're looking at essentially 2 years down the road. I know we often talk about thinking about some of those things in advance and not having them come up just as we're thinking about the budget for that year. So I think it's a real helpful thing to come here. And I think updates as the project goes along, so we can see, what the need is and what the potential cost is going forward, and where we might fund that from at the end of this, depending on where we are at that point. But I think it's a useful thing, and I'll open the floor up now. Any select board members have questions, comments for Michael?
Oh, well, I just want to make the comment that I think this is just a brilliant move on the part of the ICF and much needed on Islesboro. And I'm very excited and very grateful that they're putting this opportunity to our island, giving this opportunity.
Any other comments or questions from anyone else who's here in
Is it
person? or Phil?
200,000 for first year, or is it 100,000?
100,000 a year, is that right, Michael?
Yes, plus the town's 7,500 a year. Yeah.
Okay. And you have two people that have agreed to
Yep.
perform its functions?
We do indeed. Yeah, the health center's been directly involved in working with those folks, as Lindsay Dacre has at the school. Yeah.
So
And-
one of them's an island resident and the other one would come from the mainland?
No, they're both from the mainland.
Both from the mainland. Okay.
Yeah, both mainland providers. I mean, it's, I think, virtually impossible to have someone operating ethically here at that level, who's a member, a year-round resident. I don't think it's possible.
Agreed.
Yeah, they would not comply. Also, I just want to say one more thing. Sorry, guys, and then I'll get out of your hair. This also could potentially dovetail very nicely with the new health center building project. It was definitely intentional on the part of ICF in terms of its thinking about sort of kickstarting this thing, so that we can hopefully take advantage of the new building whenever it's ready, with people who are well qualified at that point, hopefully connected to a good patient base here and doing good work. So anyway, that's it for now.
Thank you very much. Janet has one
And
question.
Michael is going to make this same presentation to the school committee. Is that correct? Or have you already
Yeah.
done
No, we're gonna, Lindsay and I are gonna talk to the school committee. She's really gonna take the lead on that. One of the reasons why I don't have a lot of fancy detailed info for you this evening is that Emily Davis, she's the clinical professional counselor working at the school, or will be. She's actually away currently and has been away for a few weeks. So she's not actually going to be, at a point with her process where we can actually communicate effectively the plan for the school until the end of the month. So things are still shaping, or being shaped, I should say. So.
Great. Anything else for Michael before we move on? Hearing none. Thank you very much, Michael.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Next on the agenda is discuss closing down the Tick-Borne Disease Committee. Linda Gillies and Derek Roberts, both of whom are here today.
Well, we can divide our talk, and I thought, because the tick-borne disease question goes back a long way, and I think there are people here who don't realize maybe how much has happened. And so I thought I'd just take a couple of minutes to review that, going back to 1997. And then Derek will talk about the rationale for discontinuing the tick-borne disease question now. The island became aware of a tick problem back in 1997. And they contacted the vector-borne disease laboratory at Maine Medical, which they worked with then for years. And they did a survey of how many ticks there were on Osborough, and there were very few, 0.5, and of which none were infected. The first case of Lyme disease, diagnosed on Lyme disease, was in 2002. And then in 2006, there were 4 cases, and there was another survey taken by the vector-borne disease laboratory, and there they found 2.5 ticks per hour, and it was 24% infected. And so things were ratcheting up. Then in 2008, at a health center advisory board meeting at this very table, Edie Konechny was head of the health center. And she, at the beginning of the meeting, said there were 18 cases of Lyme disease this year, 2008. And then the meeting went on and was about to end. And Edie raised her hand and said, wait a minute, were you listening to me? For 18 cases. And she said, I advise that Osborough begin really to pay attention to this issue, and that we start with a committee to make a report to the select board. And so that committee was really the beginning of the tick-borne disease prevention committee. And it was Jack Coffin, George Evans, Laura Houle, me. And we did a report for the select board, who in 2009 said, yes, we have to pay attention to this. And so they appointed a committee called the Lyme Disease Prevention Project, which a couple of years later became the Tick-Borne Disease Prevention Committee. And during that time, that period, there were tick surveys, there were deer surveys, and then the committee came up with this report. I don't know if any of you remember it, but I have copies, and it really is not bad. So if anybody is interested, I have copies and would be glad to give you one. Then the emphasis changed away from information gathering, which was essentially what our committee did, to reducing the deer. And I won't go into that issue. It's so complicated. But there was a deer reduction committee, which was separate from the tick-borne disease prevention committee. And you'll all remember what's known as the deer fight. And that took place in 2014, where it was proposed that the deer be reduced to 10 per square mile using special hunts. And it came to a vote in September 2014, and the town voted against it 148 to 87. So that was pretty definitive. And so that was the end of that idea. The Deer Reduction Committee went out of business, and the Tick-Borne Disease Prevention Committee was asked by the select board to provide information and to monitor the tick-borne situation. And that's what we've done since then. And we put together a website and the 4 brochures that you see at the ferry landings, and have kept track of the numbers every year. And Linda Wentworth did that, and now Beth O'Meara is interested in it and will keep on doing it. And essentially, that is the only real responsibility for the Tick-Borne Disease Prevention Committee, other than making sure that we have the brochures and keeping the website up to date, which there's not a lot of new information, except possibly the possibility of a vaccine. So we keep tabs on that. I just point out to you that in 2021, there were 96 cases of tick-borne disease on this island. And in 2022, 68 cases. we still have a problem. But the islanders, I think in no small part, because of this information, people are pretty sophisticated and the health center staff is fabulous on this issue. And so, now I'll turn it over to Derek.
It's really interesting to think that we've had 15 years of significant work by this committee. And I think that this year is a year of celebration, and I have two things we could celebrate. One is that we now know about ticks. People on the island are asking for information. They know where to find it, new people. And people who have been here for a while are relatively careful. The process of tracking down the number of tick bites, the number of cases that came and were checked by the health center and then decided we didn't need to treat. And then the cases that we thought had Lyme disease but weren't sure because they didn't have the rash. There was a lot going on. And now we know how to do all that. The providers here are remarkable, and providers from other places sometimes say, ask those people on Islesboro what to do, because we have worked so hard at it. We have such a good system in place now that basically the providers, when they see a patient with a tick problem, put a check mark on a chart. We add those check marks up and come up with the numbers. It's as simple as that. As long as people do the work of putting the information in the chart. So we don't need a committee for that. Linda Wentworth, Linda Gillies and I have been doing this for the last year. And I have to be honest and say we haven't had one formal meeting. So we are on the HCAB committee. And I think that committee could be responsible enough to add the numbers should something happen that Linda and or I could not do that. The health center providers are much better than they used to be at actually keeping track of all the numbers. So it would be our suggestion that we do not have a committee anymore, but continue the work of what we're doing to track tick-borne disease on the island. The other thing, I mean, it's how often do you get to say, well, we've done enough, we know enough, we can let this committee go. The other thing that I would like to do is celebrate the work that Linda has done. Everything since the very beginning of this committee, she has tracked, she has kept. I keep saying, Linda, you should write a book because she's got such great, reliable information. And I've just loved working with her for that reason. So it's up to all of you. But
thank you both very much for coming, and a big thanks for many, many years of hard work on this issue to get to the point where we are today, which is not solving the problem, but having a much better understanding, having knowledgeable staff at the health center, knowledgeable people in the community. So I applaud all of the hard work from both of you. It's been great. And I think it sounds like disbanding the committee in favor of the Health Center Advisory Board or other mechanisms for keeping track of that information is a very reasonable thing to do. I'll open it up to other select board members for comments, questions.
I mean, I would just echo thanks for all of the work. I mean, it really is a tremendous amount of work and over such a long period of time. It just flew by. But thank you for all of that time. And I also think the reflection that it takes to say like, just because we've done it this way, like, how can we simplify this? What's working? I am in favor. I think there's lots of times when we add committees and it takes a lot. I think I really like the reflection to say what is really working and what do we need to make sure that we keep the essential functions of this, without kind of maintaining a committee structure if it's no longer suits the need. So I fully support it and appreciate you coming to.
Well, as I said, this problem is not over. It's very much with us, and if something changes, you can reinstate this committee, but for the moment.
We'll call you,
Great.
we'll call you Linda B.
Have all your notebooks. I'd like to say one thing, oh, I'm sorry.
Please, go right ahead.
That we're still drafting off the funds from the Deer Reduction Committee to cover expenses for the tick-borne, like the website or any other brochures and things, so it hasn't cost the town. They've had no budget, we're still running on that, so.
And we can still produce the pamphlets then.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanna, you did such a great job, both of you, in your appreciation, so I don't have much to add except for a really heartfelt thank you for all the years of great work, and it's just really wonderful, thank you. Little bummer.
With that, I would entertain a motion to disband the tick-borne disease committee.
So, second.
Moved by Phil, second by Lauren. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Thank you very much.
Thank
Linda.
you.
Very much.
Thank you, David.
Next on the agenda is town office network problems. I know that Shay specifically was having some issues. I asked about the how we were running email. I know I personally just have the town email forwarded to my personal email. That's the way I handle it. But
Thank you, guys.
what were so Paige, thank you for being here. And Shay, what were the issues you were
Right,
having?
so I'm sorry, I'm trying to like have a, having committee discussion because my email didn't work, but I do think, I have, I know over the past kind of year, I feel like there's been kind of 3 different migrations, it seems like, from wherever our email is that temporarily causes a connectivity issue, with receiving or sending emails. I know, I feel like it's, I remember sort of 3 times over the past year, and it is fixed. But often the website is impacted, and I know this last time was in the middle of a hiring process, so it was sort of, it highlighted the problem for me in ways that it hadn't necessarily impacted in the past. And so I wanted to raise it. I think it's email is often something that we sort of just rely on to work. And when there's hiccups, I just thought it was worth, I know Paige has been talking about kind of wanting to assess the system and potentially come with a set of recommendations for what is needed. And I guess I would just say, I feel like the system needs some upgrade, and I would support kind of expediting that process and figuring out how to make it as streamlined as possible.
You just want it to work.
I just want it to work.
Yeah, can I add, I don't use the select board email anymore because I just stopped getting them. And I couldn't, so the way I had to do it in the past, when I did get select board messages and I could use it to send or receive, I couldn't get it on my computer, so I had to send it to my computer and then use it, pull it up and use it. And I think Paige could teach me the right way to do that, but it just got more complicated and easier to just send it from my phone to my computer and open it up there. So, and I've had a problem with it for a long time, and even today, an email that you sent, I never got, even after you sent, I think you sent it. a
Did you
second time.
receive last night that bid spec? Or who received it? You two did. Did you, Phil, ever? Because Lauren said she didn't, and you never got it, which I can't.
I
explain.
can't say one way or the other.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
I'm talking about the bid, the one single bid that you sent out.
Yes, it was like a package of all that he turned in, and
Yes, yeah.
I sent it to Steve Black too. I haven't heard that he didn't receive it, but it's just odd that some board didn't.
I mean, it does seem like the town could pretty easily have a big company like Gmail or someone host the town email. And that might be easy resolution. I don't know what you think about that page.
Well, there's certainly a whole story which if you want, I will give to you.
Please.
I'll back up and say, I don't even know how long we've been with this hosting service, 10 years or more.
What's the hosting service?
It's AQ Host, which is a small hosting firm. I don't know, when was Jeff around? When was that?
I started, wait, 11, he left late 11, but he was here 2009 to 2011.
So it was around 2010 when they got put in. And, you know, so we were very simple and what we were trying to do very small. And that was a very affordable and easy service to use. There's thousands of hosting services out there. And they served well for us for a very minimal cost. I mean, at this point right now, I think we're paying $120 a year, so like $10 a month, which is for our web hosting and our email, which are really two different services, but they're related because of our domain name, the islesboro.com, townofislesboro.com. But several things have gone on. One is we're increasingly demanding on what we want from the system. The other is the hosting service has been changing, going downhill. And in the last year, there were several disruptions that looking back now, I think what was going on is they were positioning themselves to be bought out, which then happened. And these were the burps that went on. They were making changes on the service without announcing to the user community that it was happening. It's just we find out all of a sudden, oh, something changed and we got to go run around and make the changes to follow up. So that definitely is not good. But altogether, the other thing is the website, the hosting service that we're using on that, the same service. We use a editing program it's old, it's outdated. We really want to go to something else, something more modern. So when we move forward, there's two ways of looking at things, the email and the web. So the email side, indeed, we could go to something like Gmail. The problem with something like that's going to be, you're going to pay per user per month. And it'll start going up to hundreds of dollars a month, no problem. We've got, I think we're using something along 50 email addresses, but a bunch of those can be pared down. I'd say absolutely, we got like 29 to 30. So, you know, that starts adding up per month. I don't think we need something as like Gmail. We just need a generic hosting service that is more reliable. And that's, I don't think, a big issue to go find that. To me, the bigger issue is two forms of asking the questions of what do you want to do in the mail side and what do you want to do on the website. The mail side, I think some of the real questions are town policy. What do you want to do for like the freedom of information requests, that kind of a thing. This town, like I personally believe most towns in Maine have no real way of dealing with that. Meaning you've got to have a pretty sophisticated, something moderately sophisticated put in place where you're archiving your emails and you can retrieve them for requests. The way it is now, if by intent or mistake, employees delete the emails, they're gone. They're on a monthly backup that the server's making. You ask them, do you back up our email? Oh yeah, you back it up. But if in 3 weeks we ask them, oh, we need this email back, what they're going to do is restore the entire email system on that day. So everybody's email now matches that. So you can try to search for those emails. So it's obviously not workable. So the question becomes, how do you want to deal with that, or do you not want to deal with that? I mean, so I bring that up because that really starts to determine what level of payment and service do you need from email. If you're not going to need to address those kind of concerns, most any of the hosting services will work fine. So there's always the possibility of hosting email ourselves in the server, but it's like not even thinking about it. It's not worth it. On the website, same story. It's easy enough to switch. I mean, WordPress there's a number of hosting services that support that and other editing packages. The bigger issue is, well, what do you want to do to make the change? And to me, the first step of that is review each of the departments, everybody who's got information out there. Is it current? Is it not current? You know, what do you want it to say at the end of the day? Gather that information, and then that gets put into the new system. So, you know, both of those can take some time, month, 2 months, whatever, you're in the middle of budget season, 3 months, whatever, but you come up with those answers. Switching over is moderately easy. And then the only other aspect of switching over is at the moment, I know Janet and Carrie and Tina, they know how to put stuff on the website. You switch over, you want to do it where you don't, it's not in a high pressure period where you disrupt things where, you know, they're too busy or can't learn how to do it and you can't get things posted. So again, you just want to plan for the transition, you know, at a reasonable rate, implemented smoothly. So in a high level, those are the things that are in my mind. And, you know, I don't believe we have high demands on it. It's just middle level demands and a better hosting service and better web editing package. No question whatsoever, they're in line. The other side of the coin right now, who knows how things are gonna go, but it's my view, it should stay smooth for a while, and say should because we have no control. But part of what you were seeing there, Shay, was what I see as two parts. These guys, for whatever reason, I don't get it, but the domain renewal was set up automatically to happen and charge my credit card to make it happen. That happens every year. Also, the last several years, 3 or 4 years, every year, even though they charge it, their system didn't say the domain was updated. So then the domain expires, and that's when all of a sudden you can't get to the website, can't get to the email, and I have to open a problem ticket. It takes them half a day to fix it. And then we get technical, there's something called DNS servers around. It just depends how long that propagates through the internet. So everybody who's trying to come in actually gets the updated information and back online. That's been an annual event, which even though proactively I asked them, are we all set? They say, yes, the problem occurred. So we had that problem, and then we had the problem when they were making their server changes. And as I say, I don't know where it was a month or so ago, they got bought out. So at the moment, it appears to me things are gonna stabilize, sit still. It's gonna probably be reasonably dependable, but who knows? So if that helps in your feeling of urgency, you know, just food for thought. But so as an overview, that's kind of my thoughts of where we're sitting.
A lot of good information, Paige. Thanks for showing up and having a conversation about it. I mean, it does seem like, I mean, as I look at the town website, there's certainly room to modernize and make it better. And I think that there's the other side of that is it's a very time consuming process to think about updating the town website and keeping it updated and keeping it fresh is a lot. It's no small task. It's not like you put it on someone's plate to do in the last 15 minutes of the day. It's a lot of work for sure. But I think that having that as sort of a future goal and something we might try to tackle during the winter and probably have to hire someone to work on that specifically. And then hiring, you know, moving on to a different, whatever it may be. I mean, as Paige said, there's lots and lots of companies. Gmail's only one of them, but like that are reliable and we wouldn't have the same problems. And I think that seems reasonable too. And perhaps we ought to add this to the budget discussion about the town municipal budget and whether we want to put a line item in for changing over website, email, all that stuff, and have another conversation about it then. But I think,
Yeah, you could give us like a ballpark too, or if we were gonna put money away, you mean this year start, or you think using it in FY 24?
depends on like what we're trying to do, right? But I think we could certainly fund the entire thing this year. Depends on what we're doing though, right?
Yeah.
Depends on what it costs.
I'm also wondering if it makes sense to reach out to, the Maine Municipal Association. I don't know if they have recommendations or services. I mean, I know like the school has a network organization that, you know, helps to coordinate. I don't know if that is something that takes place kind of at the state level for municipalities or at the county level. You know, or at the very least, we could understand what other people are using for systems. And what people are finding to be the most cost-effective solution.
I think we could pretty easily put a number in the budget that is going to, if we just look at a few providers and say, we don't even have to make the decision about what we're migrating to, but say, this is, we're gonna have 30 users and this, you know, the average cost is $20 a user per month, and that's $600 a month. And then you extrapolate from that, and the same thing with web hosting and say, we're gonna put the money in there, and then the only question is, how much does the town wanna spend on redoing the website? And that's a big possible, that's a big one, just like, gee, how much time and money are you gonna pour into that? And we could have that conversation, but that I feel like is a much more fluid number as opposed to, ballparking what we're gonna spend on the monthly cost of a few services that we can really look at. I mean, those rates are online. We can see what any of these companies charge, and then we'll say, this is what we'll need to cover, sort of regardless of who we switch to, and then try to think about doing it. I think Paige is right. We don't want to do it in the middle of the summer when everybody's crazy and something doesn't work, and then, it's just not the time. I mean, when things are slower in the winter is probably the best time to think about actually making the change, not when it's really busy.
And I'm thinking, not sure I'm right, that the email is a higher priority than addressing the website. Not that we don't want a good website, but that we're doing emails constantly, and that's a pretty high priority.
Yeah, and I think having workable email is necessary in today's world. And
One thing I would mention, the email and the web hosting typically, especially at our level, they typically go by the same service, but you could have totally different service providers. So you could switch email to a new provider right now. That could just happen and the website just sits still. Yeah, that's an option for you. One thing you do want to consider in the email is also security and privacy. How concerned are you with that? If you really want highly secure email, perhaps you only want it for 10 users, maybe the select board and the health center, for example, and transfer station and a bunch of the others, you don't need it. And in that case, you probably need 2 domains, because typically, I mean, there's ways around it, but typically it's 1 domain. Mike Pratt here speaking to the health center on some of the technology issues, when he mentioned a way of dealing with it where it's 1 domain. That's possible, but the point being, you don't necessarily need to budget fully for all accounts if you make the choice that you only care about a select number of them being protected.
Yeah, I think, the idea about freedom of access and what we do about emails is a concern, and I know that there's required training that, they tell you you're not supposed to delete emails and all of these things that are public information. And then the question is that sufficient, or does the town want to actively back up and save all the emails to make sure that nothing gets deleted, even by mistake, or, I think that's a question that's out there too, in terms of, I'm sure that there are systems that are set up for municipalities and for governments that have to deal with these requirements.
There are the questions of portability.
Yeah.
There are for the big guys.
Yes, indeed.
And I did check, I think you're right, Shay, you can check again with the Maine Municipal Associations. A couple of years back, I did check with them, and it was a pretty quiet echo chamber. They did have, it was more the website, they did have a service that they talked about that a lot of small municipalities use. I'm not convinced that would work well for us, but it might. But that's the web hosting, not the email. But they might have something to suggest for that these days. It's been a couple of years since I talked to them.
Do you have any recommendations on hosting services? Have you gone through and taken a look at what you think is the best?
No, I haven't surveyed for a while. I mean, I deal with ones called Ionis that they're definitely more solid, a lot more support from them. I mean, and the cost isn't that much more. It's pretty similar. One thing that's rather annoying with this hosting service we're with, the only way you contact them is through email. You cannot talk to them on the phone. And so, when I'm trying, when I'm trying to heckle them about, how's the progress on this problem, the answer is we're working on it. Wait for the response, Whereas like the hosting service I'm with, 24 hours you can call. And like everything, okay, you might not get the full support you want, but indeed it's way better. So just without even looking, I'd say the Ionis is a significant step up, but no, I have not surveyed. There's many out there. There's also Microsoft 365, which that's the same tier as Google, where you've got a complete cloud-based infrastructure where you can do all kinds of things if you want. you know, personally, I don't really want to go down either one of those paths with them, but that's, you know, up to you guys how you want to really approach that.
How come you don't want to go down the path of either of those two? Just out of curiosity.
Well, I mean, some of it's philosophical. I don't agree with the business model, some of that, you know, especially the Google side, but also the 365. But some of it's, we don't necessarily need a lot of that. It's a lot of it, it's a lot of overkill. And the other side of it to me too, is when you go to those kind of services, it's the same problem with all the cloud-based services, is they're great and they're useful, but you give complete control to them. When they decide it's time to change, you change, whether you like it or not. And I don't like that. I'd rather have, services more, when you do the hosting, the middle tier hosting stuff, it's more, you choose the service. And the worst thing that happens is, typically the worst thing that happens is the hosting service is starting to migrate and change, but you're sticking on this one and they just start charging you more for it. But you have time now to migrate to what you want. So it's not shoved down your throat when you're not ready for it.
Janet, can you reach out to the municipal association?
I will.
And see if they have recommendations, and hopefully we'll maybe put this on the agenda for next week to just keep the conversation going and see what they might say. And if they have specific recommendations for towns, especially with an eye for things like FOA and whatever other concerns that they raise for municipalities.
And security.
And security, all of those things, and I'm sure, that's who they deal with, so I'm sure they have those thoughts.
Yeah, and I can put it on the manager's listserv and see what other towns are and what the costs.
Let's start there and just see what other towns are doing, if the municipal association has a recommendation, and then we'll, from that, maybe start looking at some pricing and see what it is, and see if we might put stuff in the budget. Or even, as Paige says, maybe if it's not unreasonably expensive and we have money in the town's budget somewhere for that, make a switch before the change, before the next town meeting. Yeah, budget cycle, yeah, exactly. So. Thanks, Paige. That was very helpful. Any other questions before we move on?
No, I mean, thank you for your help. I feel bad. I mean, Paige has had to make has traveled for house calls for tech support. And I appreciate that. And I just want to find something that doesn't require you to have to do. I wasn't as reliable with less, so I appreciate what what you are doing to make sure that it is working for everyone.
Yeah, thank you, girl.
Yeah.
Do you like mussels? With pro flow.
All right, well, thank you very much, Paige. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And
Next
have a
on the-
good vacation.
I shall indeed.
So no problems for how long?
Well,
6 or 7 weeks?
Six, I'll be back, pretty much the month of March, I'm out.
Oh.
But I'll still be available.
I know, poor Paige, you cannot get away from us.
No, it's just like Shay's saying, I'm happy to keep it going. What my view of all of it, my own business, but just technology in the town, my view is to get things far enough ahead where they are smooth and stable without me in the middle of it, but that's a journey. So, and as far as I'm concerned, after the last 15 years of trying to do it, we're getting close. So that's where I don't mind doing that effort just to get to the finish line.
Sounds good. Thanks, Paige.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is approving warrant number 17 for FY 23.
So moved.
Moved by Melissa,
Second.
second by Shay. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I just wanted to point out that that warrant is so large because we're sending to Bar Harbor Trust, our capital reserve, $285,000 that we budgeted last year. So I always mean to do this before the budget, so you can see now what's in the actual capital reserve. So I'll make sure that gets amended so you can.
That's good. Next appointments, Board of Appeals, Dylan Purington. Dylan is here. Dylan, thank you for waiting. Dylan is a thoughtful and conscientious person who I think would be great for the Board of Appeals. Is there something you want to say, Dylan? Most of the people don't show up.
I don't.
I know.
have anything to say. And,
it just seemed appropriate to show up.
Great.
And this is my socialization for the week.
Oh.
That's like I'm at a party.
You want to run for select board, right? Well,
So, yeah, I have nothing to say. I was suggested that this was open and, okay, I'll do my best to do whatever it is.
great. That sounds good.
Yeah,
Uh,
that Tom Tudor's a
That's a
great
winner.
enlister.
Yeah.
I would move that we appoint Dylan to the Board of Appeals.
I would
second
second
by
that.
Jay and second by Phil. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It is unanimous.
Yeah, you can't go
Be
now.
careful, Dylan. This is like, it's like a gateway. drug.
It's a sliding
Yeah.
slope, you know?
Pretty soon you're
The
gonna be on
Harbor
all
Committee
sorts of
was the
committees.
gateway.
And Harvard Committee tomorrow. so
Yes.
yes, give me social.
Look at you.
The parties don't stop.
Yeah.
With that, chair comments, I did speak with Linda Acorn at the ticket booth. She was very, pleased to get the town recognition for all of the years that she spent working the ticket booth. Very happy, and very thankful for that. So really glad that we did that.
I want to add to that, Iffy came up to me and knocked on my window waiting in line. And she said, "You're the first select board person I've run into. I just want to say how much that meant to me." And she like said, and it came in a frame and it was very, very sweet appreciation and just to everybody.
I'm glad we did that. It's nice to appreciate.
That's a
those-
great idea.
Yeah. Good.
And then I saw Linda working at the terminal.
Well, I know.
I said,
I said, I thought you were. That's right. Then she said, well, I'm really retiring in April. And I said, well, the town still appreciates it.
And what did the ferry service do?
I don't want to even venture a guess. Those are my chair comments, vice chair comments. Shay.
Comments.
Melissa,
The school will hopefully be reopened fully back K through 12, starting the 27th. As many of you know, we've had K through 5 at the ICC for many thanks to Melissa Olson for opening up the library for our 6th and 7th graders. Everybody from the town came together wonderfully in order to help us through with the water breakage and everything. It's probably not the place to say it, but we're going to have the roof done in the summer, right after school starts. And now we're gonna have to do the demo and the construction off of all of the rooms that were damaged through the water pipes. And so Adventure Camp will not be able to be hosted at the school this year. Sorry, better news. Owlsboro varsity basketball players, both boys and girls teams have made it to playoffs. We are taking RSVPs for fan busing on Saturday. The entire town should go. This is a big deal. And we're gonna win and it's gonna be
And where do they have to go?
Augusta. They only have to go ride the ferry over 7:30 ferry Friday morning. Get on the fan bus. We'll drive you all the way to Augusta. You get to stay there for the entire day, see all of the games, and then we'll have you back by the 5 o'clock fair.
Great.
$10 for some to enter. Felt like I could get you in for 5. Like that.
Hope it's full.
great. Anything else? Let's see, Lauren,
No comment.
Bill gets the last word.
Okay. Let's go.
Motion to adjourn,
Motion.
second, aye. Sorry, buddy.
Warren, have a great trip.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, when do you leave?
Bye, guys. Where are you going? I'm going to, Key West and then. St. Simon's Island. Exactly, they email to you. Send it from Ellsberg email, or just your personal email.
The sign is there.